Welcome to the Bulletproof Entrepreneurial Podcast, where we interview the world's leading CEOs, business executives, entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and authors. Our mission is to learn the strategies and tactics that have helped our guests succeed in business and life and share those lessons with you so that you can become the Bulletproof Entrepreneur. My name is Chi Odogu, and I'm the co-founder and COO of Odogu Media Group. Odogu Media Group is a podcast marketing and new media agency that helps corporations create and amplify their story via high-quality branded audio content that builds a community of highly engaged fans who are their ideal clients for their premium products and services. And now, without further ado, on with the show. Hey everyone, welcome to another exciting episode of the Bulletproof Entrepreneurial Podcast. My guest today is Jonathan Slane. Jonathan is a business owner, recession expert, an author, and an entrepreneur. He and his business partner and co-author Paul Belair have written a book titled Rock the Recession: How Successful Leaders Prepare for, Thrive During, and Create Wealth After Downturns. They have a website called recession.com, which I am just jealous that you got that domain name, by the way. So their website is recession.com, and that website or portal teaches you everything you need to know as to how to organize your business to not only survive a recession, but also thrive during a recession and build a better and stronger organization. So I'm pleased to have Jonathan on the show today to tell us a little bit more about himself, his business experience, and then we dive deep into his book, Rock the Recession. So with that said, Jonathan, welcome to the show today.
Thanks for having me. Did you want to take a guess at how I got recession.com before we dive in?
Okay, all right, let's see. You bought it from someone for like six figures?
It wasn't quite six figures, but yes, I did buy it from someone. So I don't know if the audience is curious.
No, I'm personally curious. How did you get the domain name?
Well, no, we used a broker through GoDaddy, okay. And then they were asking $25,000, okay. And we ended up negotiating and settling somewhere below that number.
Nice, very nice.
But yeah, we made the investment because also wanted the website to be something that people were excited about, and recessions are typically something that everyone fears.
Yep.
And our take on it was, if we get the domain, then it can be a happy place for people to come, because we're really all about how people can look forward to recessions instead of just how do you survive them.
Okay, great. So before we even talk about your background and how you got here, why should people be excited about recession? Because in the news for the past year or so, we've been hearing, there's a recession coming out of the United States, all the macro. I think they said somewhere, I haven't personally kept up with the news, but I think they said, the yield curve has inverted. And as a finance and economics guy, you know what that means, and we all know what that means. But why should people be excited about recession? Because recession in everyone's mind mean possible layoffs, everything is going to shrink, we don't know where to turn, we're all going to be in the fetal position crying until we can sort ourselves up.
Well, that's why I'm especially excited to be on your show with your audience, because it's all people trying to figure out, how am I as an entrepreneur going to get ahead of the curve? How can I take my life to the next level? What can I do to create a new opportunity? And I think the great news about recessions is that they allow you to hack the usual system. So you don't have to spend years and years and decades grinding away in order to build something if you can leverage the opportunities that a recession brings. There is so much instability in the economy. There's so many opportunities that come up in a recession that as a young entrepreneur or as a new entrepreneur, you can leverage those if you're smart enough to take advantage of them instead of having to just hustle and grind. And I think that's a lot of what's out there now is it's like, if you just hustle and you just work hard enough, eventually you'll get there, which I appreciate. I'm a grinder. I do this because I love it. Probably work too much. But with a recession, what if there was an opportunity to hack the system? And since World War II, we've had 11 recessions. They last on average 11 months. They don't come around that often. So they're precious opportunities. But the whole point of the book, everything that we're talking about is, how can you rock the recession? What do you need to do now to plan for it so that when it does hit, you can really jump the line and get ahead of where everybody else is.
Great. So now this book and your business was birthed out of your experience in the last recession, the Great Recession. You were deep in the hole. You had a franchise company. You were in debt, from what I remember in the book, over $250,000 that your mother-in-law bailed you out with up until you were able to sort yourself out.
Dude, it gets worse. It was $250,000. But the worst part, dude, is that I didn't borrow it all at once. It was every other week I would call her because we had payroll. And so it was like 12 different times that I had to call her asking her if I could borrow another $20,000. And so after that experience, and luckily I paid her back. And as you can see, I'm still married.
Yeah.
So that's good. The thing that I learned is that nobody should have to borrow money from their mother-in-law to survive. So that's really the why. I know a lot of times in business, we're supposed to start with why. So that's my why, is that nobody should have to borrow money from their mother-in-law to survive a recession. And then beyond that, what could I have done differently if I had been thinking about the fitness business, which is the business I was in? What could I have done differently going into the recession to really take advantage of the market opportunities?
Yeah. So now let's talk a little bit about your background before you got into the fitness business. You were an investment banker. You were working 80, 100 hours a week. You travel with your brother-in-law, I believe, right, to go check out this business before. So tell us your story. I'm giving the story away because I read the book and I know the story, but tell us your story, what you learned as an investment banker, what you saw the opportunities were in this business, and then how did you guys build this business so quickly over the 5 years before you now got into the problem you had with the recession?
Well, so investment banking in Cleveland, and was working 80 to 100 hours a week in mergers and acquisitions. And without that base, and I like to tell people that I did it for 2 years, but really that was human years. In dog years, it was more like 4 years of experience, because when you're doing something 80 to 100 hours a week, it's really all consuming. Without that experience, I don't think I would have gone on to be an entrepreneur. But what happened was my brother-in-law, he's the gym rat in the family. As you can tell, I'm not exactly the gym rat, but he was like, will you come with me? There's a franchise. It's in Denver. It's called Fitness Together. And I want you to come check it out with me, because it's always been my dream to own my own business. And I want to make sure that the franchise is okay. And so I flew with him out to Denver, and I looked at the franchise opportunity with him. And on the flight home, I said, hey, why don't I leave the bank and do this with you? And that was really, I wish I could tell you that I had a real great plan for it, but that's what was going on. It was at a time in my life when I was sitting in my office, in my cubicle, 80 to 100 hours a week, and I was turning green from the fluorescent lights. And that was really the genesis of it. So without that experience, I don't think I would have had the courage to go on to become an entrepreneur and to open our own gyms. But we opened a gym. And then what I was really good at was opening more gyms and also securing the financing to do that. So we were able to open a second location quickly, and then a third location, a fourth location, a fifth location. And all of a sudden we were the largest franchisee in the system. Nobody had ever opened 5 units. And I quickly learned why. We were in the personal training market, and it's a very relationship-oriented business. It's very dependent on having the right manager and the right people. And so it's tremendously difficult to scale. And so all of a sudden I look back and I had 25 employees and I was 25 years old and had no idea what I was doing. And so we started to actually use traction. I don't know, has that made it up to Toronto?
Yeah, Gino Wickman, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I've come across it over the years, but I've not personally gone through the program myself.
So we started to use that program in our gyms, the entrepreneurial operating system, and we had the top location. So we figured we were doing something right when our numbers were better and we were growing. And so we grew and we grew and we grew. And then the Great Recession hit. And so Great Recession hits, we didn't have a plan. And so I'm curled up in the floor of my office in the fetal position, trying to figure out what to do. And looking back, I'm going to let you and your audience in on a little secret. Personal training is about the worst thing that you can try to sell in a recession. Nobody wants personal training in a recession.
Really?
Because it's a discretionary expense. So people start to cut back. And so having a personal trainer and spending money on that, I think is one of the first things to go. And if I had thought that through, if I had had a plan, if I had followed the program that we put on in the book, then I hopefully could have avoided that and really leveraged the trends in fitness to take advantage of the recession.
Interesting. I personally would have thought it would be the opposite, that at least people will still care about their physical health and well-being. Kind of like, we all cut our hair regardless of whatever happens in the economy. I would think people might just say, okay, yes, but I won't go as often, but I'll still go because I want to maintain my peak physical health and condition. But that's interesting. You mentioned is one of the first things to get cut off.
Right. Oh, I think it's a good point. People still work out. It's just a question of they don't need a personal trainer for $60 or $75 an hour. They can work out in a group class. And so a lot of the market moved more towards group fitness. Or you can see right now the trend is with Peloton, and people want to work out at home. They want a subscription model where they can. So we saw all those trends back before the Great Recession, but we never stopped to think about it and position ourselves to take advantage of it. So for your audience, I think that's, if we're getting into how to get ready to rock the recession, the first gear is to assess your situation. So you want to benchmark where you are versus the rest of the market, versus your peers, versus your competitors. Where are you? And if you want to do that, you mentioned recession.com as the website. If you go on there, there's a free assessment. It's 20 questions. And it spits out a score from 0 to 100 to let you see how ready to rock the recession that you are. So that's step one.
So now I know that in the midst of that was when you got connected with Paul Belair, correct?
Yep.
And he was your mentor. He trained you. He taught you, because in his own business, he had actually prepared for the recession. So walk us through, that mentorship relationship with him, what you learned during that process, and then how that transformed into the idea of you guys creating this business and then ultimately writing this book.
Okay. So I don't know, have you heard of the Entrepreneurs Organization?
Yes, I have.
Okay. So EO. And then I think you have a pretty big chapter in Toronto, actually. And then there's YPO, the Young Presidents Organization. And so in Cleveland, there's a partnership between YPO and EO for the Young Presidents Organization to provide mentors to the members of EO. And I was randomly paired up with Paul 10 years ago. And so from there, actually the first thing that we worked on for our first year together was really a life plan. So Paul helped me to get together a life plan, which is something I'd recommend for young entrepreneurs or for anyone who's leaving corporate world to get into being an entrepreneur, is to start with that, to figure out why you're doing this and what you want to accomplish. And that's what Paul really forced me to do first.
I'm actually looking here at your 2019 family life plan and quest board, the firestorm and everything. So I was like, all right, as you've mentioned it, let's talk a little bit more about that, because it's funny how creating a life plan can actually help you build a better business. So let's delve deeper into that a little bit further, because I can see here from 2016 how your life plan has changed. So how did you create that first one, and then how did that help you inform your decisions in building your business?
So I think there's a lot of options with life planning. The one thing I'm sure about to start is that you need to spend 16 hours with a legal pad and a pen at your favorite coffee shop. That's the rule. I would absolutely always start there. It can go many directions from there. So for me, I did like 8 2-hour sessions, and it was easiest for me to do it on a Saturday or Sunday morning before my kids got up, when I wasn't missed. And also during the weekends, I can decompress. It's really hard for me to try to take out a couple hours during a weekday, but I don't care. I think I'm agnostic on that. But I just if you want to do this, I think you need to commit 16 hours, and then you need to start with a blank sheet of paper and let it flow from there. So for me, I have a very logical, analytical perspective. So I was all about bullet points, and I think in PowerPoint bullets, and that's how I created my first plan. I think it depends on your audience's behavioral profile. It may be that if you're super detail oriented, that would drive you crazy and you need to write out in excruciating detail what the plan is. Or some of my friends that are entrepreneurs, that are visionaries, they're very artistic. They're using more images, kind of like where you cut out things from magazines to create what your vision is.
The vision board, right? Yeah.
Right. And it doesn't matter to me. I think really it's that investment of 16 hours in yourself. Because again, philosophically, I think we spend more time planning Christmas, or we spend more time planning our daughter's wedding than we spend on planning our life. And for me, it was just, I was at a point with Paul pushing me on this, my mentor, that wasn't good enough. That unless I was willing to just let life take me where it was going to take me, that I need to invest that 16 hours in myself. And then, yeah, like you mentioned, I know that I get asked about the tools I used. So I threw up a little mini site, which I'm not really broadcasting widely, but if your audience is interested, there's rockyourlifeplan.com. It just has, I think it's got my life plan up there, and it's got a few tools that I usually have. Yeah, if my clients ever want to get it. So if your audience is interested, that's all free, and they can, if it can be of use to them, then great.
Yeah, I'm going to link to it in the show notes, because in my research, I opened everything up. So I saw it, I read through it, I was like, oh, wow, that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, no, well, if your audience is into it, then I'd love to hear from them, because selfishly it would help me, because that's the book I'm working on right now is Rock Your Life. So I know we're a little off topic with the main book, but if they're into the life planning, they get into that and they want to shoot me a note, then I'm gathering research right now on that topic.
Okay, we'll do. Yeah, so now you write this book, you come through the recession after getting mentored and coached by Paul. So in this book, you mentioned 4 steps in how to, navigate and weather the storm in a recession. And I want you to briefly talk about those 4 steps, and then maybe we might dive into one a little bit deeper.
Okay. So again, the first one is to benchmark your preparation. That's where you're going to assess where you are, and you can do that on recession.com. The second one is to tune up your business and your personal life. So that's asking questions like, do I have a capital reserve in case I need it? And you can use it either to survive, like if you lose your job, you're in a recession. It doesn't matter what's going on in the economy. So this is, do you have an emergency savings fund that you can use? Or say that you get a great opportunity and you're looking to get into a business and you've got an opportunity to buy an asset for really cheap because we're in a recession. Do you have the capital available to make that happen? So that's step 2, is to tune up your business and personal life. Step 3, what we call third gear, is to race. So this is where you're making sure your company is healthy, that you have the right culture, that you've got productivity measures for all of your employees, so that when we get into the recession, you can hit 4th gear, which is to accelerate. And accelerate's where you're going to take off, you're going to slingshot past the competition, you're going to buy your competitors, you're going to buy assets that are cheaper in a recession, or you're going to be able to pick up talent that's not available right now. Because I think a lot of your audience may have noticed unemployment's at record lows, and so talent is really hard to get right now. And a recession will give us new opportunities for talent, but only if we're prepared. Because that talent may come out on the market for a minute in a recession, but they're A players, right? So they're quickly going to find a new home. You have to be ready to pounce. And that's what I want the audience to get from this, is just what do you need to do now, since the economy is in recovery, since the economy is healthy, to be prepared to pounce.
Now, one of the key things you mentioned in the book was that you don't necessarily have to fire employees just because you're going through a recession. I know that's the knee-jerk reaction of most companies, that whenever they even think things are going to go down, all right, let's lay off people. That's the first step to stop the bleeding, and then they move from there. But you talked about in your book that, that you don't need to fire people, that if you have a plan in place, so you have a plan in place when things are working, for when things are not, you have plan A to plan Z, that no matter what situation comes up, you should be more prepared to work with that plan, as opposed to just using the knee-jerk reaction of firing people and cutting expenses and all that typical stuff that most people do in recession.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit more about that and delve deeper into the type of plan you need to keep in place. at that point in time? Because you mentioned, I believe his name is Don something or the other. They had a plan in their construction firm.
Yeah, Don Greenland.
Yes.
So
yes.
Don Greenland from Nabolt's Construction. So the idea here, so the last piece, if you're still listening to us with this podcast, he did the first 4 steps of the model, the first 4 gears, and it's not working, right? You're not growing your business. You're not looking forward to the recession. Then the last step is to have an emergency brake. And by emergency brake, that's my fancy way of saying a 4-tiered plan. So you can say, look, my revenue at my company is $1 million. If I ever saw my revenue drop to 900,000, then here's what I would do with my recession plan. If I saw my revenue drop from $1 million to 800,000, then I would activate tier 2 of my plan. And I recommend 4 tiers. The tiers, not the ones when you're crying, but TIER. So 4 levels, 4 tiers. And so by doing that now, though, before we're in a recession, before you ever need it, you'll make decisions that are logical instead of emotional, because recessions are super emotional times. And you make suboptimal decisions when you're emotional. So if you've already planned out how you're going to manage, if you have a recession, then you can just execute your plan instead of spending the first couple months of the recession curled up in the fetal position like I did. And then I would say for your audience too, the great part about a recession plan is it's not just for economic recessions. There are several non-economic recessions that we all have, especially when we're small entrepreneurs. So if you lose your biggest customer, you're in a recession. If your 5 best employees leave and they go and start a competing business, you're in a recession. Or say you find out that your business partner embezzled from you and you lost $50,000. If you're a small entrepreneur, you're in a recession. The recession plan, this emergency brake, can apply for all those situations regardless of what's going on in the economy.
Oh, great. So now, as we start to wind down the show, Jonathan, you've mentioned a lot about, what to do in the recession, preparing and creating the plan. So now let's talk a little bit more about, how can we invest in ourselves. Now, we're not talking economically, but I'm talking more along the personal development space, because you created the life plan. I believe the life plan is also an offshoot of being personally well developed to weather the storm, because it's an emotional situation, as you just mentioned. So walk us through the process of building that, tough mindset and well-being that you need to say, you know what, no matter what happens, I lose my job, my company goes under, whatever, I have the intestinal fortitude to continue this struggle and see it through and make it out on the other side.
So the life plan is my North Star, because I did that in the cool, rational light of day instead of the emotional heat of the night. So when I lose a client, when something doesn't work out for me now, when I don't sell as many books as I want to sell in a period, that's what I can go back to remind myself of why I'm doing this in the first place and what's important. The second thing is that I'm in the entrepreneurs organization so that I'm constantly around other entrepreneurs so that we have a support system. I mean, I think our tribe is weird. Like who wants to go out and be an entrepreneur? It's much easier to have a day job and to not have to worry. There's a big difference between signing the back of a paycheck and signing the front of a paycheck. And I never have forgotten that. So with that comes a lot of responsibility. And I think the last thing is I believe leaders are readers. And so for me, it's about just making time. And I know none of us have time, but I make time to be reading 2 to 3 books a month so that I can just stay up to speed with what's going on and to generate new ideas. And I make that time happen just because I think that's the way that we keep ourselves sharp. I listen to a lot of books as well. And then in the back of my book, I think you see I have an appendix with a bunch of my other favorite books, just because I think that's the way that we can really learn and grow. As well as I also love reading, I love podcasts, of course. And then I love reading academic research. So reading the actual academic research and then reacting to that, as opposed to just what some people think, but have we actually studied this to make sure that what we've said is scientifically validated? I think a lot of that's lost and important these days too.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing all that. So, Jonathan, we've reached the end of the podcast. I really want to thank you for coming to share your wisdom and your story. But before I let you go, people can see it in the background there, but tell us a little bit more about where people can reach out to you, connect with you, get the book, and of course, interact with you to learn more about what you're doing.
Sure. The recession.com is the website. So you can go there. It's got links to all of our tools. The assessment there is free. That's a good starting point for you to figure out where you're at in terms of how ready you are to rock the recession. The book's available on Amazon.com. You may have heard of it. It's this little website. And beyond that, I'm always available at jonathan@recession.com. If the audience wants to reach out with questions on anything they come across, always happy to help.
Awesome. And I'll link to all that in the show notes when this is edited
Cool.
and ready to go live. So thanks for coming on to share your story, Jonathan. I appreciate you taking the time to do this today.
All right, rock on.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in once again to the Bulletproof Entrepreneur Podcast. If you like what you heard on today's episode of the show, please go to iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcast and leave a review and a comment. It helps other great listeners like yourself find the show, and it tells me if I'm doing a good job or not and what type of guests to bring that can impart solid wisdom to help you grow on your entrepreneurial journey. Once again, you can always email me at info@odogwu.com. That's info@odogwu.com to let me know, if you want a different type of guest or if you even want to be considered as a guest on the show. So till next time, guys, have a great day, stay bulletproof, and of course, I'll catch you on the next episode of the Bulletproof Entrepreneur Podcast.